Hey folks, again here with the OSU PDC. We are taking a look at assignment 2, the watershed assignment. Now, a lot of you might be thinking this is a lot of information to take in on our second assignment. It is, but part of this is to steep you immediately into the fact that we live in watersheds and we live and die. That might seem a little extreme, but in terms of what can feed life into our properties, it's accurate. We live and die by the watersheds we're in. So we really want to understand the watersheds we're in and that we have flow through our property or flow out of and into another watershed. So we're going to take a look at 2 examples. Again, if you've been following along with the videos, you'll see that Neil and I will go back and forth. We'll talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, things we really enjoy seeing, not only for us, but also for the students' understanding of their watershed. If this is your first time thinking about watersheds, just think about it as a cup. So all of us live in some kind of cup, and some of us might live at the top of the cup or the bottom of the cup or the middle of the cup, but there's cups within cups within cups, because every time we take a look at a watershed, there is water that collects and flows just like as it falls onto a roof and comes together. And we might be in the drain line or the gutter line where the water flows through, and if so, that can be problematic. We might be up on high on one of the ridges where it's quite high and dry. So this is to first start that process. And then the second process of understanding we're trying to get across is that when we work on properties professionally, Neil and I and other folks within this course, we take a look at what's called a watershed catchment. We take a look at what the total potential of the water that falls into a watershed and might go through our property, because that gives us volumes we can start to use to calculate, do we have enough water to warrant things like earthworks? And if so, what kind of earthworks, and down the chain of ideas we come to. But again, this is one of those first observation analyses that is necessary to understand your site. So don't stop when you think you've done enough just to fill the requirements of the assignment. Go a little bit further and make sure you understand your watershed, because it will provide dividends to you down the road if you decide to execute on this property, or if you decide to work with regenerative design, permaculture design in the future. Understanding your watershed is exceptionally important. Neil, anything to add before we jump into the case studies?
I just want to second that this is a challenging assignment right at the beginning of the course, and that if you run into specific challenges, submit something and ask questions, and hopefully you can get some very specific feedback if you have pointed questions. If you're clear where you ran into challenges, then we can help you more effectively.
Great advice. So we're going to show you a couple of examples from students' assignments from past PDCs. Again, folks who've done really great work, and we want to be able to show you what they've done and also some of the areas that they might have missed. So as usual, something that you'll start to see is that good assignments usually border to give us a sense of what's inside the assignment and what's outside the assignment. Sometimes people don't, and they think they can just run things over the page. Personal preference, at least on my side, is really to give a good border so I understand what's in and outside of scope. They've also started to give us a title. They've given us some information about the address, what it's for, the permaculture course, assignment 2, and they've given us a sense of their name and the date. And this is an important thing. We're going to go over naming nomenclature for files. I'll send it to you in an email, but for this assignment, we've got a lot of good pieces. So this individual has started off at the top, and they said, okay, here's the watershed we're in. And then they've gone to the small, they've given us a boundary. So they've gone in, they've taken a look at the boundary. Now, you might be saying, how the heck did they get this? This individual, I know, basically overlapped this onto Google Earth. They brought up the terrain. They exaggerated the terrain, which is in the preferences, which goes from 0 to 3. And then they literally traced all the ridges, so that way they could get a sense of the high points and the low points. That's the extreme level of what you might need to do to understand your basin. There's also one I'll show you where they just took the basin map directly off of government maps. They've also showed the flow line, so where the water flows. Now, something that I think a lot of people forget is that water flows at a right angle to contour. So if you have a contour line, and if contour lines are new to you, that's okay. That's what we're here to do. We're here to learn. But if you start to learn how to read contour maps, know that the water will flow at a right angle. So if you have a circle, so if we had a circle here, and I'm just going to draw this for folks, chances are all of these have a contour that flows through them like this, because all those lines need to flow at right angles across contour. Say we had a contour line, and I'll draw it over here, that was like this. This is like a peak, and then this was the lower elevation, and this was the lower elevation. Again, we're taking a look at this topographically. So if we took a look at this from the side, it would look like this, and each one of these lines would actually correlate to an elevation on this area. So we would get a sense of that. That was a bad one. We're gonna undo that one. So we get a sense of what this might look like. So this all translates to the lines that would be above here. Now, if we were gonna show how the water would flow off of this, what would end up happening is we would take a look and we would say the water would flow at right angles. So the water would flow off like this, 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 always at right angles. And I don't know about you, Neil, but it's definitely something that when I found out and understood completely, completely changed the way that I looked at landscape, that water will always flow to right angles. Anything you wanted to add to that, Neil?
No, I think that's solid. That's the way it goes.
Okay, sounds good.
Practice, look at topographic maps and practice. You should be able to get, for most, at least in the US, most sites, you can get a topographic map that overlays on Google Earth, and you can look at that with the exaggerated terrain, and that will give you a better understanding of what that topographic map represents on the landscape, because it can be a little bit of a learning curve to translate that top view of a flat two-dimensional space into a three-dimensional landscape.
Yeah, great point. Great point. So one other thing I want to mention is that if you're looking for contour maps in other places besides America, you'll find that they're actually quite difficult to find. My go-to is to type in the municipality or the city name or the region name and GIS and see if the region actually has maps available. If not, you may need to go to utility companies, you may need to go to forestry or mining, you may have to see if there's a company that actually produces map. There's Vault Atlas in Alberta that has the ability to have maps downloaded for cost. And then internationally, it varies from country to country. So while this course is very American-centric, USA-centric, the rest of us have to do a little bit more work, which is fine. That's the point here. It's to understand what we need to do to understand our sites. So just know you may need to invest a little bit of time in it so you don't get frustrated right off the get-go because it's not right there. So you might have to invest a little bit of patience. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to clear this, and then we're going to walk through this assignment a bit more. So here they've shown us the design site, which is really important. They've showed us the water flow, and they've already started with convention. Blue means water. Make sure if you're going to label things about water, it's blue. Don't make it green. Don't make it red. Don't make it purple. Stick with convention. It's really easy to go off on a wild goose chase with colors, but blue is water, and it's a great place to start. Down here in the corner, I love this, and this is one of the reasons I chose this as a design example. If you are in an urban site, I would like to see the way that the water flows down the streets and where the storm drains are, because in urban centers, there's the possibility you might be able to capture some of that rainwater that comes off of the road, do a little bit of filtration if there's enough elevation drop, sometimes called head. It gives us the ability to utilize that water and bring it into the property. And I don't know where Brad Lancaster's work is in the course. It might be already in this sector, but if you haven't looked at Brad Lancaster's work and the idea of curb cuts, highly recommend you check it out. So great examples here all around, gives us a sense of all the different elements here. And the next step I would have loved to have seen is more of the water, how it flows on site. And especially if you have a building in here, start to show me how the water flows off the roof. Show me that you know that water flows in certain directions, because that's what we're looking for. And unless you put it down graphically, Neil and I are going to ask questions about it, because that's the only way that we can interact. Neil, other thoughts about this one?
I just want to reinforce that they've located the design site in every scale image. In the large blow-up image, they've got a location for it in the second one, and then in the third one, they don't have the pin, then they have the boundary. I would like to see something that maybe, oh, they do have an arrow there too that specifies design site. So yep, that's really helpful because it continues to build on your understanding of the actual connectedness of a unit place into a bigger system. And that's a lot of what we're looking at, especially at these beginning site observation and understanding assignments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great points. So here's another great assignment that started off with where the design site was, talking a little bit about how there's no upstream watershed because of where they specifically are, and downstream there's the ocean. So starting to give us a sense. Now this is a great example, especially in this one, of showing us governmental maps and showing us that already we're seeing things like title blocks. Title blocks, again, a convention that we want to draw attention to, gives us a sense about the name of this map, who it's sponsored by, giving us a sense of scale, giving us a sense of the compass rose, giving us some information about site, any disclaimers, any conversations, giving us the big picture view to show us where this is, and then the small picture view talking about a legend. So we're big fans of legends here. Very important to show us, if you put down symbols and imagery, you should put it in the legend. Just because you think a green triangle means a fire hydrant, and I say that because as soon as I say green triangle, people are thinking tree. People think different things for symbols. So if you put a symbol down on your map, put it in the legend. Really simple, really easy. If you're using any sort of thickened line, watershed. If you're using any kind of dotted line, seasonal creek. Using any kind of straight line, creek. Show us what's going on here. It really helps us to understand what you're trying to convey. This also has a wonderful pie-shaped conversation that not only shows us what the land cover is, but also what the distribution of that land cover is. So nice to get that bit more information. That's definitely above and beyond what you need to do, just calling attention to it. Again, here, they're showing us exactly where this site is. Now, as soon as you start to see that these are the main water flows, again, they use black, we want to see blue. As soon as you see this, we know intuitively, Neil and I, if there is a drainage here, a creek here, and a drainage here, a creek here, there's going to be a ridge here. And chances are, if this is the edge of the watershed, there's a ridge here, which means that there's actually a watershed here that they didn't show us. So they could have actually shown us the watershed here, and that's actually what I want to see. I want to see the watershed that most affects your site. So I think they missed a big step here, and I told them as such. So this is a great opportunity for you to go back in, take a look at this, then overlay with your topographical maps if you have them, and start to show us generally what that watershed would look like. And generally it would probably be something like this, where the water would come like down like so. And of course, these are all arrows because it shows flow direction. You want to make sure that there is no chance we're going to mess up what we're looking at. So we totally understand what's happening here. They did us one better. They moved down another layer. I just have to get off of the drawing tool so I can move down. And they showed us again where we are. And again, they showed us some topographical lines. So we get that. They showed us some creek lines. And then they did what I love. They showed us how the water flows on property. I love this. This gives me so much joy when I see it. Please emulate this. Show me how the water flows. If they wanted to do a bit more, they could have even showed me how the water flows off of their property, if there are any drains on their property. Really start to get into it and show us what's going on. Again, they use some symbols, design site, so I saw it, used the compass rose. It gave me a general sense about what's going on. So this, I really like this assignment, as you can tell from my enthusiasm, which goes to show what's happening behind the scenes when I see your assignment and how much excited I get about, how much excited. My grammar's very good today, at the end of the day, so you know I'm excited. Neil, anything else you wanted to add about watershed assignment? And maybe this one, I can move up and down if you want me to move up or down.
Yeah, one thing on this page is that they do have a topographic map with their site located, so they could use the tool that you taught them about water always moving perpendicular to contour. That could have been used within the topographic map to actually understand the watershed affecting that site a little bit more effectively. So, you know, they might have, if you really want to get a good understanding of your site, you can go through that one more layer of detail. At this point, we're trying to get an understanding of the site in the larger pattern, how it's connected to other sites around it through water and such. So basically do your best, and we'll give you feedback and try to help you move on to the next level. Also, if you could scroll up to the one right above it, you mentioned use convention and blue, and they use black on that one. One thing is, it looks to me like blue might be really difficult to read on that map. So that could be a reason for the black. And then but if they were to use blue, for example, then I would recommend maybe making the line weight or width bigger so that it's easier to see. So you might run into that. And if you do run into something like that, you can just, let us know. You could call it out on the side, blue was not legible, so use black for water or something like that. Just to, again, just communicating helps us understand and helps us to work with you, more effectively.
Yeah. Great point. Great point. That idea of showing your work. So if something comes up and you have to change it or you can't find something, just tell us, I looked high and low. I couldn't find any topographical maps. I don't know. I went on to Google Earth. I put on high exaggeration. I still didn't get anything. So I did due diligence and I don't know. And that's okay too. Sometimes we can't find it. Neil and I readily come to these situations and then we employ other methods to produce topographical maps, from on-site mapping with transit levels, or with total ground stations, or with drones, or with compass and builder's level. I've done a number of different ways to produce contour maps. We are not asking that of you in this course. If you want to take that on, happy to help folks through that, happy to help folks process that. But it's really important to know that the more information we have from the get-go, the better off we're going to understand, the better off you're going to understand your site. I think that's about it for me, Neil. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the watershed assignment?
Nope, I'm good. It's great to see 2 examples of assignments done very well. I think that's what we want to see. Is we're giving you the tools and the examples, so hopefully you get the chance to practice. And again, if you have questions, show us what your questions are. Ideally, take a screenshot or something like that, so that you can, again, practice that graphic communication and make it more clear where you're struggling. I do have one final thing. Make sure that you look at the references provided, the resources provided, the different websites before just giving up, because there's a lot of valuable resources in there. And I find that sometimes students don't actually look through what's been provided to them before they get stuck, or after they get stuck either. And so there are tools that you can go through and look through. So make sure to check that out too.
Great advice. Great advice. Well, thanks again, Neil, and thanks everybody for watching. Again, we're trying to give a little bit more value to folks. If you're in our group, you're getting videos. If you're not in our group, chances are you're not getting videos. So know that we really are here for your success. We want you to succeed. We want to give you 100% all the time. And if we don't, it's only because we know there's something missing or there's something you can do better. Last thing I'll say, and I want you to really hear this. If we give you a lot of detailed feedback, it means you've probably already reached a really high percentage of completion on your assignment, and we're now being quite persnickety, which means it just increases your ability. If we're giving you pretty general feedback, chances are we're trying to soften the blow, so that way we don't give you all that. So we're trying to raise you up so that way we can keep honing your design skills so you can understand what's going on. If you've ever been through a formal education process that's really focused on building craft, you'll know that this is a really successful way to build good craftsmanship and good understanding. So we're trying to adjust our feedback for the level of what we've been given. Thanks again, and we'll see you at the next video.